everyone. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. My sister's just passing around some information about our speakers for tonight so you can follow along. We are gathered here to celebrate birth workers, the doulas, midwives, nurses, childbirth educators, lactation gurus, mental health champions, and every other superhero who helps bring new life into the world. If anyone deserves a cape, it's all of you. I want to start by saying that this event is a safe, affirming, and welcoming space for everyone. No matter your background, identity, or family structure, whether you're here because you've caught babies or supported parents or fielded 1,000 "is this normal" texts or experienced the incredible wonder that is maternal health, you are welcome. We want to honor the full diversity of people who give birth and the incredible professionals who care for them. As many of you know, my sister and I run Maternal Wealth, where we strive to provide resources to empower families and birth workers through knowledge, support, and a good sense of humor. Because let's be honest, pregnancy and birth come with enough surprises. Some of the things that we offer through Maternal Wealth, we have the Maternal Wealth Database. It's a curated directory of maternal health specialists created to help people find the support they need during the pregnancy, labor, delivery, and postpartum experience. And also the Maternal Wealth podcast that features real experiences from people who've given birth and birth workers who supported them. It's storytelling that reminds us how powerful, unpredictable, and beautifully human birth can be. Through Maternal Wealth, our goal is simple: to help families feel prepared and to lift up the birth workers who make this world a safer, kinder place to start life. Thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for being here tonight to celebrate one another. We are honored to share this space with you tonight. Now, before we begin, if you could please join me in welcoming Erin, our host for tonight, and also one of our speakers. We're excited to hear you as well.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Stephanie, for being here. Welcome you all to Beyond Birthing. I just want to give a little bit of an intro of what we do here. So we are the first full-time, full-service prenatal wellness center and postpartum support center on the North Shore, which is super exciting. In this space, we offer childbirth education classes, prenatal support groups, postpartum support groups, doula services. We have full-time chiropractic. We have maternal mental health, focusing on that perinatal period, which is one of the main reasons we're all here, and one of the main reasons that this place exists, which you're going to hear tonight with my story. We also have nutrition and gut microbiome, lactation consultants, massage, prenatal ultrasound now, and we have some really cool things coming down the pipe as well. But we really focus here on that pregnancy through the first 12 months of postpartum, because that is when the highest indications for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders exist, and we want a place for people to know that they can just walk into, and we've got them. You know, I always say to anyone who comes into this space, like, I might not know what you need, you might not know what you need, but at least we're going to go together. You're never alone, and so that is what Beyond Birthing is, and we welcome you into our community, and our doors always open. So thank you.
All right, I'm going to introduce our first speaker for tonight, Amanda Hurley.
Got it. Why here? Thank you so much for the introduction. Hello, everybody. I am new to this world completely other than just, being a mom of 2-year-old twins. So I did have them at Beverly Hospital. I had a planned C-section, which C-section moms hit me up. Yes, actually very nice. Not for everyone, but very nice for me. And I came here through just having a postpartum experience that involved a medical crisis that was also wrapped up in a mental health crisis that was very confusing and a little bit of a mystery still how it all came together. And I went to the mom support group, Beverly Hospital, and just didn't relate to anyone there. Don't relate to a lot of my friends on some of these things. And I thought, it's not just me. I'm sure there's women out there with all kinds of crazy stories, and I just haven't made friends with them yet. So I selfishly thought I'd start a podcast to do that, but then also to help others and build some community. Let people hear our voices So it's called I Brought You Into This World. We have 5 episodes so far. So far, we're talking to women in Beverly about their experience, perinatal experience, but very specifically the postpartum period and especially mental health and the things that are hard to talk about. And it's been great. I met some great people, and I found all of you guys through. I found Erin, and I found Stephanie, and I found so many connections. So through Maternal Wealth and Beyond Birthing, we're also talking about doing little mini series. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. So thank you for just inviting me and letting me be a part of it all. And good to see some of you. Nice to meet some of you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, which is Erin. She began her journey in the birth world as a postpartum and birth doula. Over the past 10 years, she has supported more than 350 births across greater Boston hospitals and in-home birth settings. Since founding Beyond Birthing in June of 2024, Erin has had the honor of guiding over 700 families through their perinatal journeys. She's a certified lactation counselor, childbirth educator, and spitting babies parent educator. And she has created and teaches many of the prenatal education classes offered at Beyond Birthing. Erin also leads the center's prenatal and postpartum support groups and is deeply committed to growing Beyond Birthing into a welcoming, full-service, parent-focused perinatal space that truly reflects the needs of a growing family. Outside of her work, Erin shares life with her husband and best friend of 22 years, Adam, and their 2 beautiful daughters, Evelyn and Rosalie. All 3 are the inspiration behind so much of what she does. Thank you so much.
Thanks for meeting us. Awesome. Thanks. Do you want me to sit, Amanda?
Well, whatever you like. I'll just follow you.
I'd love to kind of sit if I could.
Sure.
Awesome. Amazing. I was telling Stephanie when we got here, I was like, as birth workers, we rarely sit. So, right? So we might as well sit. Thanks all for being here. There's so much, when I was trying to think about what to speak about tonight, I was trying to rack my brains of, do I make this a story about how I came into birth work? Do I make this a story about a birth I supported that changed my journey? Do I talk about how Beyond Birthing came to be? And I think that yesterday I had a really amazing experience that I was able to teach. So I'm a spinning babies parent educator, and I believe it wholeheartedly that it is a paradigm that has completely shifted the way that I support births and the way that people can give birth. And it changes people from being a birth happening to them, it's happening because of them. And having people around a birthing person that acknowledges their power, their advocacy, their authenticity, their autonomy, lots of big words, and is really important. And I feel like as a birth worker, that's the space we hold. We are here to hold mirrors up for people. We are here to let them know that you have this. And, I think about, as a doula, what do I do? As a doula, I don't provide answers. That's not my job at all. My job is to provide space and hold space and help them figure out questions that they need. And to let them understand that someone else doesn't tell them what they need. Someone else doesn't tell them what they should do, or scare them into doing it. And it's really here to just hold space and facilitate conversation and emotions, right? Big emotions don't surprise any of us as a birth worker, right? That's a big part of what we do. So going back to with yesterday, I was able to, my mentor, Lorenza Holt, is a Spinning Babies trainer. She's one of the founders of many of the doula organizations here in Massachusetts, as well as she's going to be the leader for getting doulas recognized by the state. So she's doing really incredible work. But yesterday was her last Spinning Babies workshop that she taught because she retired. And I got the privilege of sharing the space with her. And we were at Salem Hospital. Salem Hospital was amazing and got 50 seats for their labor and delivery nurses so that they could learn spinning babies. And that is insane. That is amazing in every single way. But also who showed up in the space were beyond, not just labor and delivery nurses, but midwives and OBs, and as well as doulas, because that's where it needs to happen. It can't just be us talking to one group. We need to all talk to each other, and we need to all collaborate, and we need to all listen. Because I can't do what a labor and delivery nurse does. I can't do what an OB does. I cannot do what a midwife does, nor should I. Do you know what I mean? It's all about connection and talking. And I think when Lorenza was teaching yesterday, so many times the system got brought up, or like, how do we, well, we're on a clock, so we can't do spinning babies because like they're not allowed to labor down there. Like there's just lots of things, policies and procedures that are stopping birth workers from doing what they actually want to do and why they got into it. And right, that's across the board in all of healthcare, right? I don't think any nurse goes into any sort of profession, they're like, ooh, yes, charting. That's exactly what I want to do, and it's about, I think, after yesterday, and then of course I went out to dinner with Lorenza, and then two of my closest friends that we all got together because of Lorenza. Like that was literally how I found them and connected with them, is that we need to have more conversations among us. We need to have more conversations where we're open to be vulnerable, we're open to be wrong, we're open to new paradigms like spinning babies, or new paradigms in how we can do when we have a shoulder dystocia, we move to hands and knees instead of jumping on that mama's belly. Again, just having different options, asking questions. There's so much happening in the world right now that is polarizing in many, many ways, right? But I have to say, one of the biggest things I love that is happening in this world right now, that is nothing to do with politics or religion or race or anything, is just that questions are all of a sudden starting to be asked. And I think as birth workers, that's what our job should be. We should be there to ask questions, not tell people things, not say, and not ask, what are your questions? Because that's not a question. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, well, you know what I mean. Like, it's what kind of question, how can we help people to figure out what they need to make an informed decision? And so I know this environment is really very sensitive right now for so many different reasons, but I do love the fact that questions are being asked. And I love the fact that people showed up in that space yesterday, that we had labor and delivery nurses who, I have some thoughts about laboring down and the benefits of it, and at least just giving time to people. And some of the nurses, like when I brought that up, or I just said, I was like, oh, I think I know your policy about laboring down. The nurses just looked at the OBs and they were like, because, and the OBs are like, this is out of my hands even. So where are the conversations happening, right? And like, who's making these decisions? And I just really loved the fact that there were multiple professions and birth workers in that room. And that's what needs to happen. I feel like since COVID, we've all been so siloed, right? And this, again, leads into why I created this space. Like, we shouldn't be working alone. Birth isn't supposed to happen alone. So why are the people who support birth alone? Like, we need to, I really, really want to bring professionals together. I want everyone to come to the table with an open heart and open mind, and just with full of curiosity, and I think that, this is something that I've probably learned more since, of course, I've had kids, and since I dropped my ego of my 20s, and, now I'm in my 40s, and I'm in my F at 40s, as I call it, because it's fun, but like, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong. And I think that I really loved the fact that this Story Slam was an option and that it's hosted. And thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to have it, because I think it's something that we need to hold space for birth workers to talk to each other, right? We need, and to listen to each other and to facilitate, because how can we create change? And so I think yesterday really sparked how nice it was to have us just not talking to one population and really having everyone into the space. And that really goes why To Beyond Birthing came about, because I want everyone under one roof, because then everyone knows what everyone is doing. And it's easy for someone to go and see Sarah Gregory, who's our lactation consultant, to then pop over and see Courtney Neal, who's our chiropractor, and then follow up with me and being like, okay, well, what about new baby support? How are your grandparents going? Then I send them to Dr. Dana Allen. You know what I mean? Like, it's so nice to just have a network and a web. And I just really hope that with birth work, it's a mission of mine that we just start bringing more people into the conversation. And how I do that in my doula work is, number one, I listen. And number two, I stay in my scope. That's a huge part of it. But number three, whenever I do something with the client, I always invite the labor and delivery nurse in before I touch them. Meaning moving them in a way that could potentially screw up a external fetal monitor, or just because it's nice to let them know what I'm doing, because this is a shared space. It's not their space. It's not my client's space. It's not my space. It's actually all of our spaces. So we all need to take up space in that room. And so I think that it's important that we share. And so, as a doula, I think it's extremely important that I just hold space. And I think that's the biggest thing that I wanted to share tonight, that as birth workers, we hold space for our clients, but we need to hold space for each other. That goes to, Stephanie and I were just talking beforehand as about a situation that happened this week. And I was like, who's taking care of the nurses that helped that mother? Who's taking care of the OB that had to do what they had to do? Who's taking care of the OB that had to flick the switch? Who's that? And it's just, we forget that because we signed up for it, you're fine. We knew what we were getting into. As a midwife, Alexa, you knew what you were getting into. You know that there's bad things that happen, so we don't need to worry about, you're good. But that's not true. We give nothing but prenatal support to birthing women, and then postpartum, we let them go. We let them go, and we let them say, good luck, call us if you need us, but if you cannot call us between the hours of 8 and 8, that would be great. It's the weekend. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's the holidays. I'm busy. But where's our postpartum? And I think about that a lot, because the only way I become a better doula is by reflecting on my own experiences. But I become a better doula and a better person who works in this world by talking to other people who have some solidarity or understanding or can help me make sense of what it is. Also, some of my best conversations have been with actually midwives and nurses after a birth that I've attended, and be like, can you just explain to me a little bit more where you are coming from? Or why did that happen? Or, hey, can I get some feedback for myself? Because I'm human. I'm not always going to be perfect. Don't tell my children. But it's, it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. I wonder about our postpartum support. And I think about that a lot, and I think about that we see a lot. We see a lot of bad shit. We do. And we see a lot of good shit. We see a lot of good. Am I allowed to swear, Amanda? Great. Awesome. I was like, if anyone knows me, that's pretty mild. I'll try to keep it there. But we see there is secondary trauma. There is celebrations. Why does it only need to be we only talk when we have a horrible thing happen to us? Why don't we just get together and just share positive stories, or just share experiences? There can be, how many times have you all had an experience that's positive and negative? So you don't need to qualify it at all. I think everyone lives in this binary world where in fact we are all in the gray, and I think that when I think about how much I've been a doula now for 10 years, and in the beginning I just held space and I tried to fix things and I tried to do it, and now I literally the less I do, the more effective I am. Does that make sense? And I really think that also goes to the importance of prenatal education, which is a soapbox I'll get on in a second, because I just really think that having a very sound prenatal education sets these birthing people up as for understanding how a teamwork approach can be helpful. And so when you have a prenatal education class that is talking about the importance of a doula and a midwife and an OB and distinguishing the difference between them all, as well as then also making sure we have a therapist, making sure we also have boundaries set up, making sure we have a postpartum doula, a birth doula if we're able to have it. I think having a childbirth education class that shows the resources and shows how all of these people are actually here for this one person only strengthens our network together. And I think that's very important. But I think as a doula, the reason I'm most active in births is because I'm doing my spinning baby stuff. And a lot of times people will be like, in the moment, I didn't like you. And I'm like, well, thanks. But afterwards, they're like, wow, that worked. And I go, I promise I'm never going to suggest to do something if I didn't think it was going to help you. And they always get to say no, because no is a great sentence. That's a complete sentence. But, you know, so the main thing I'm doing whenever I'm physically with my clients is I'm doing spinning babies, balances or positions or anything like that. But other than that, it's really about just holding space. And, but, you know, it's just so important that we are having conversations together that are not just about the bad things, that are not just about the good things, but just also about like how daily life is going. And again, before I started Beyond Birthing, like it was, you know, everyone was in COVID. We were all from our house, and like most doulas all have like individual practices, and we never really talk to each other. If we do, it's like a hey, good see ya, y'all refer to you. And there are agencies out there, of course, that have a little bit more of a community base to them, which are wonderful. But like I remember when I got here, and you know, so there's offices here, and so we have people who are in and out and walking around all the time. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot I needed my village, because I was just alone. I was like, I can do this. I got it. All the voices in my head. Interesting. But do you know what I mean? But like, how nice is it to actually like see somebody in person? Because we're used to doing it alone, but we're not supposed to do it alone. And that's what like my motto that I say to all of the birthing people that I work with and postpartum people. Like, you're not meant to do this alone. Birth is meant to actually be learned from community, like by in-person experiences. It's not supposed to be learned from me teaching in front of you. It's not supposed to be learned by an online module or someone who's, you know, just reading off a slideshow and going, so this is what happens. And then that, like, you know, like it's actually meant to be person to person, experience to experience, like visceral body to visceral body. And, you know, and so it's when we have this community around us. And like when I got here, I was like, I just got overwhelmed with emotion. I mean, that happens a lot. I'm in perimenopause, but like, which is very funny because everyone here is like either pregnant or postpartum, and like they cry and I'm like, I cry. So I'm like, really, it's like, it's just like a lot of solidarity here for many reasons, which also makes me realize, where's the support for my next transition, right? Where's the support for my next transition? And, put that on your plate. We're going to talk about that later, Alexa. Right. So, but again, like we should be supporting each other through all of these transitions. But when I got here, I would just be overcome with emotion because I was like, I forgot how much connection means in this world. And having connections with your colleagues and supporting each other and just having conversations with people who are different, who look different than you, think different than you, believe different things than you. Like, it's only going to help strengthen you. Or it's going to help you create more questions, or it's going to help you understand your convictions more. And, you know, and I think just being that open mind is something that's so helpful, but we do that through conversation and we do that through dialogue. And so when I had this place and then all of a sudden people were, just walking around, I was like, oh my God, like, this is so cool. This is so cool. And that's why, like, this is why we keep growing. Like, we're already growing. We've already moved up to the second floor of this place. And like, we've got more stuff down the pipeline. And, I just really wanted my time up here to say, like, don't forget you need a village too. Don't forget that you need to talk to people who are not just the same profession as you, but that shares the same space as you. And, be afraid to make mistakes. Just like we tell our clients, like, they're not supposed to know how to do it. Really, we're not either. And that's okay. But if we go with someone together, then you know you're not alone. And, you know, our mental health matters too, but also our physical bodies and our friendships and our hearts. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for coming, because I just think it's really important that we share space together and we honor each other's professions and expertise and strengths and challenges. Like, you know, I'm someone who definitely is, you know, everyone's like, oh, I love them in spite of that. Oh, I love them in spite of that. And I have like totally changed my mentality, yay therapy, about that, saying like, I love them in addition to. That's a big thing, because there's some grace given there. There's some empathy given there. Even if I don't agree with it, I'm like, but that's only a small part of them, and I want their whole being, not just this one aspect of them. So I just want to say thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for sharing space and listening and being open. And this space is always open to any birth worker of any type that wants to come in here and connect and is seeking community and is seeking wisdom from all of the innate wisdom we all have here, because we all have it. I also think it's always really interesting to hear everyone's origin story of how they got into birth work, because we all got into birth work for a reason, and it's really cool. Like, this is my second act. I did other stuff before this, and it's to find those mutual common human experiences are very exciting. So thanks for sharing the space, and thanks for sharing your stories, and just, you matter. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you so much. Okay. Our next speaker is Alexa Doherty. Alexa is a certified nurse midwife and public health nurse with over 10 years of experience in maternal health as a public health professional and clinician. Alexa has worked as a midwife in both birth center and hospital settings and is deeply committed to improving the sustainability and integration of community birth within the larger healthcare system in order to reduce racial inequities, minimize health disparities, and ultimately improve maternal and neonatal outcomes. Alexa currently works in several different capacities as a clinician, public health professional, and educator. She is a midwife on labor and delivery at Boston Medical Center, an academic tertiary care and safety net hospital, where she oversees and educates resident physicians and medical students working to improve interdisciplinary collaboration, support physiologic birth, and sustain integrated midwifery care. Alexa also works at Primary Maternity Care. She helps lead and scale up the Step Up Together program, which is a quality improvement program to enhance safety and teamwork for perinatal care, particularly from the community to hospital. Lastly, Alexa is an adjunct faculty at Georgetown University, where she teaches courses, advises midwifery and women's health nurse practitioner students in their clinical placements, and oversees clinical faculty in this role across the country. So thank you so much for joining us.
That's later, Erin.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me into the space, and for Erin for holding the space and the community. I was, recalling on how I basically lived here a year ago for every day, was walking in and out of these doors between practitioners and just like needing a place to feed my child or cry or anything. So this place is very special to me, and I'm thankful to be here and share a little bit of my story or stories. I was having a hard time figuring out sort of how to come and be present. I have 3 of my own children. I've been in birth work for 12 years or so I've witnessed a lot. And so it can go in many different directions of joyful or traumatic or in between. So I'll try and pull some threads in from some of those. But I'll start with sort of the first birth I ever witnessed. I was about 21, I think, in college. My lacrosse sports trainer, hooked me up with a nurse practitioner who was a neonatal nurse practitioner, and I was interested in going into nursing, and he was like, why don't you shadow her for a couple days? So I did. We were on the response team for, if you know birth, the NICU team sometimes shows up to deliveries in either anticipation of a resuscitation or for some standard things that the baby might need some help. So we were part of that team, and I walked in and I was like, what the is happening? What is that? Is that a child being born? I don't understand how that body is looking like that. Like it was out of my realm of existence. Like, is that a vagina? Is that a human? I don't know what that is. And I just was like so blown away by how the body was accommodating birth and stretching, and was just like that. I obviously knew how humans came into this world, but just the ability of the body to change that way was eye-opening for me. And from that moment, I sort of made a pivot. I had recently returned from my study abroad in Uganda, where I shifted from physical therapy to that is completely irrelevant in much of the world. I need to focus on nursing, and specifically in sexual and reproductive health. So seeing a birth for the first time, having come out of this experience where really sexual and reproductive health and just the knowledge and education around it around the world became very sort of forefront in my mind. As something that I wanted to work to improve and address. So coming out of all of that, I went in, graduating from college, and said okay, I need to be in sexual and reproductive health somehow. met with a midwife at one point when I had sort of honed in on nursing, but I wanted to go into nursing, knowing exactly kind of what path that would take. And she made some comment, this midwife who I met with, as it was my friend's midwife who, she's like, I see a midwife for all my pap smears and GYN visits. Why don't you talk to her? We had coffee and she was like, if you ever want to deliver babies in your scope of work, then become a nurse midwife. And it was so easy for her to be like, that's just the answer. If you know you want to do sexual and reproductive health and you think maybe you want to do birth, then be a midwife because you can do all of the other things. And that first birth really stuck into my mind of like, that was insane and beautiful and magical. And like, I don't want to rule that out as an option to be somebody like in the room helping to care for that person in that moment. So sure enough, I like called my parents, was like, all right, that's it. I'm going to midwifery school. They thought I was a little bit insane in the moment, but I did it. And, every step of the way was, more and more sure of my path to becoming a midwife. I got trained as a doula while I was in midwifery school. And so fast forward, 10 years ago now, I guess, was starting my first job as a midwife and had been searching for what the right job was at the time in the Boston area. I trained at Boston Medical Center, where I am now, and at a community hospital in southern New Hampshire. Both very different vibes, but I moved to North Carolina to be in a community birth center practice that was this new sort of like fancy model of care that everybody was really jazzed about, and they were gonna, change birth centers and community birth in the whole country in 5 years, right? Like that was the mission and goal. And I was naive and a young midwife and excited to sort of get my feet under me in community birth and physiologic birth. So I picked up my husband and I and went to North Carolina. And really that space, it was a beautiful space. It was, designed to just manage like normal birth and keep people comfortable and safe and provide a safe and comfortable space for people to labor and birth and provide prenatal care and everything. But I was there for about 14 months, and that space, while I left with some trauma, it really created and poured the foundation for my trust in birth and laboring bodies and just like the physiology of birth. And the trust in myself as a provider to be able to recognize, okay, like this is normal birth. I just need to hold the space, as Erin was saying. Like I just need to sit on my hands and shut up and don't say anything and wait for the baby to start, to birth. And to know when, okay, things are not quite as normal as we expect, and how should I talk to the patient about potentially intervening and sort of what that looks like. So it really sort of built the foundation for me as a midwife and being able to understand what normal labor and birth is. Part of that model was the leadership in that model was such that they had never worked in community birth either. And because we were this system of birth centers around the country, there was some innate comparison of birth centers, and our leadership was always like, we have the lowest transfer rate. We pride ourselves on having the lowest transfer rate. And that became very instilled in me of don't transfer, right? We have the lowest transfer rate. I'm not allowed to transfer anybody. Because that's not what the patient wants, and that's not what our statistics want. So I got to do everything I can to not transfer people. Right? Not safe. Not safe. Right? But I didn't know, right? I was a new midwife. I didn't have L&D nursing experience. And I had signed up for this job as a fellowship. They were going to train me on how to be a community birth provider. So, after a lot of therapy and years later, knowing, right, that was an environment that taught me not how to be a safe community birth provider necessarily. But really, I, hold near and dear to my heart all those really beautiful magical births that were just physiologic, right? And we really didn't have to do anything but be present and be supportive and hold the space, and allow people to trust their bodies and do the things that they were designed to do. So after leaving this environment that had some difficult outcomes and really made me question whether or not birth work was the place I needed to be, I moved back here and worked at the North Shore Birth Center at that was owned by Beverly Hospital I worked there for about 4.5 years, and continued sort of my path on finding out like where I needed to be as a midwife, and trying to gain some confidence back in myself as a midwife, given some of the experiences I had just had, but still being able to maintain my skills in the community birth setting, but also have a hospital and get my skills in hospital birth when people needed to transfer for augmentation, or they wanted to transfer because they wanted an epidural, or they needed to be there because they had hypertension and we needed to induce them. Like whatever it was, it sort of built my skill set and allowed me to understand the medical component a little bit more, while also still preserving the birth center and sort of community birth model of care. I chose to birth my first child in the birth center, and was really excited to be with my colleagues and in a setting and space that I knew and was comfortable to me. And after years of experience having been witness to community birth and women's bodies doing this unmedicated and on their own, I felt pretty confident going into it. And was supported by my colleagues, Enza, doula, who had to miss tonight. But I felt well prepared with the team that I set up for myself and the preparation that I had done. And my water broke before I went into labor, and I got examined. I went home. I did acupuncture. I did all the things. Went for a beach walk, which is now something that I do with all of my labors. Went for a beach walk, and eventually went back in, got my membrane swept, and went home, and was very immediately in labor, and got to the birth center and was in very active labor. I had already talked to my midwife sort of about what my goals were for labor and not knowing exams or anything, and she was like, okay, why don't you get in the tub? That's great, you're able to be here, you're in active labor, let's get in the tub. And I had a very short labor for a first time birthing person. It was 4.5 hours between when I got there and when he was born. But I remember this moment so distinctly. I had my eyes closed and my headphones in for the whole time. But I had this moment of clarity that I think many people have if you leave them unattended. This moment of clarity where I came up and opened my eyes and looked around me, and I was like, hi guys. And I just had my birth team around me. I had my lead midwife. I had the nurse midwife, the midwife who was the baby nurse, essentially is what we call them, sort of the backup. I didn't even realize she had come in yet, and that meant I was close. So I saw the two of them, and I had Enza at the front and my husband, whose arms were killing him, doing counter pressure. But I had this moment where I looked up and I was like, hi, thank you for being here. And it was just, it brings emotion to me thinking about it, because I'd been on the other side of that so many times, right? And being down there, just sitting on my hands, watching the birthing person and smiling and trusting their bodies. And I had this moment on the other side of it where I was like, oh, they trust me. They got me. This is it. And soon thereafter, I birthed at least part of my baby in the tub. His head came out, and of course, the midwife luck had a complication. So I had a shoulder dystocia that required me to get out of the tub. And, I knew all the things and was like, okay, this is what I got to do. I got to get out. I got to do the things. I got to get on the bed. And ultimately, I knew I was in good hands, and they got the baby out, and he was just fine. But yeah, just all that to say is, right, I had gone into being a mother, having had years of experience as a birth worker, which is sometimes the opposite for some people, right? They go into birth work because of their experience they had birthing their own babies. But I think because of the experiences I had, I sort of built up this trust to birthing bodies can do this, and I can do this, and that's okay, I got this. And I'm surrounding myself with the team and education and preparation that I needed to kind of go into that. So yeah, that was, I have no idea where I am on time, but that was, it just goes to sleep, but it's all good. It's, I think knowing that as a birth worker and as a midwife, I think part of what I really hold near and dear to my heart is holding that space, as Erin said, and knowing what is normal physiologic birth. And I bring that and feel very strongly about bringing that into my current work as a nurse midwife at Boston Medical Center. That's tertiary care center. It's a very high acuity. It's a very high volume. It's like the majority of the underserved population of Boston and, you know, the surrounding areas. And so being able to understand and trust the birthing person's body and the physiology around that, and to bring that to a practice and team of clinicians that don't know even the realm of how to trust that, I think is so powerful. And reflecting on, my husband was asking, like, what stories stick out to you? And I think many of them are in my time at Boston Medical Center, of just having that space where everybody's all heightened and somebody comes in and they're unmedicated and they're laboring and they're pushing and everybody's like, get her in the bed. What is she fully? And I'm like, she's pushing and she's a multip. I don't care if she's fully, she's pushing. Like, leave her alone, you know? And having the confidence to go into that now, I think is really powerful in the work that I'm doing and helping train the residents of, you know, we get called down to the ED sometimes, and at Boston Medical Center, the ED is like, they see some shit in the ED, and people come into the trauma bay and they get the trauma team. So like, they may be having a normal unmedicated birth and they get a trauma team. They get a team who is prepared for gunshots. And then they get us, who comes down, and we're like, hey, how's it going? And all the ED team is like, thank God you guys are here. But they're still like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I need to do something. And I'm like, well, is she pushing? What baby is this? Okay. And so many times, are you going to bring her upstairs? Are you going to do this? And it's like, do you need the room? Do you have gunshots coming in? Or can we sit here and have a baby? Right? And they're like, oh yeah, we have a clean room. And I'm like, great. Then we're just going to sit here for 5 minutes. She is pushing a human out of her body. I'm not going to do that in the hallway, you know, in the elevator. We're just going to sit here, and she's going to have a baby, and it's going to be okay. But I think, right, like, our system gets so caught up in, like, the medicalization of these things and not knowing what to do when things are just normal, because it's not their training, right? And I'm blessed to be in a position that it is my training, and I can impart this sort of like space for this team and be able to be like, it's okay, we are not having gunshots, we are just having a baby, and like, I know you're scared and we'll deal with that later, but like, right now we just need to focus on this one thing. A similar story that came up was like, I'll never forget this first resident, my first few months at Boston Medical Center, and I was coming from low volume settings and low acuity, but like, I had trained as a student at Boston Medical Center, so I knew the vibe a little bit, but came in and there was a brand new intern. I started in the same month that the brand new interns start. So if you don't know much about residencies, right, like, they graduate from med school, they've got no specialization yet, and then they become an intern in their specialty. And they walk in on day one and they're specialists, right, in OBGYN. They've never caught a baby before. They literally know nothing. And so like, our job is to teach them. And by year 4, they're like more experienced than I am, and great. But this was an intern, and we walked in and the person was unmedicated. She was a multip. She was starting to bear down. She'd just gotten up off the toilet and she was standing at the bedside. And the bed had been raised up and she was like feeling really grunty. We walk in and the nurse is like, okay, she's feeling pushy. I'm like, great. Just like sitting there. I got my gloves on. I got my table ready in case. And they're like, well, is she fully? I'm like, well, yeah, she's probably, yeah. Are you going to check her? No, I don't think I'm going to. If she's pushing, if I don't see the baby coming out in the next like 10 minutes, then like maybe I'll talk about an exam, but right now we're just gonna watch and sit. And the called for the resident to come in, and the resident comes in, and I was like this on the floor, and I'm like looking like this, and you know, getting prepared. I've got all my stuff set up on the ground, and the resident just takes one look at me and she goes, are we doing this here? And I was like, get on the ground. And she was like, oh, she stumbles down to the ground, but like the look of like, how dare we? And I was like, get your ass on the ground. This is where the baby's coming out, unless she moves. But like, yes, this is where we're doing it, because this is where she would like to do it. But just this moment of like, what? And it's like, our job is to cater to their comfort and not the other way around. And that I think is just like a big shift in going into this medical model, and a shift that I feel like had I not had my years of birth center experience, and birth of my own, right, to like really ground myself in the foundation of like birth is normal and physiology is normal, I would not be able to like be imparting this on some of our residents and in even nurses, right, like the discomfort around nurses when we can't see the perineum, right. I had another one, the sheet was over there, and I asked, do you want me to check you, do you want me to move the sheet, and the patient didn't respond at all, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna leave you alone, and the nurse was like, well, how do you know? It doesn't matter. You can hear we're getting the heart tones when we need to get them, right? And I looked at the patient, I said, let me know when you feel the head coming out, and I'm going to move the sheet. And sure enough, it's like, she reached down, felt the baby's head, and said, okay, it's coming. And I moved the sheet, and the nurse was like, what? Just sometimes just like trusting the person's body to let us know. And I think it just is like so much reframing around that in the model that I'm in right now, and I've had the privilege to be able to just like be in and be able to share that, small moments of being able to trust the process for these physicians who are learning quite the opposite, right? But I think some of them really walk away from a lot of our whole midwifery team, and the births that we do and share with them, and are just like walking away having at least a little segment of like, this can be normal and this can be okay. So yeah, that's a little bit about my stories and sharing. Thank you all for letting me share and talk and be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Our next speaker is Ann Whitman. Ann has been a midwife attending home births in Massachusetts for over 30 years. She is dedicated to providing clients with individualized care and incorporates the modalities of homeopathy, herbal tinctures, and relaxation techniques into her practice. She specializes in evidence-based care, trauma-informed care, vaginal birth after cesarean, and breech babies, with the goal of creating and supporting the birthing environment each client desires. She also enjoys supporting clients who choose hospital birth in the role of a doula and a birth preparation educator. Ann has been an independent midwife since 1993. She obtained her national certification as a CPM, a certified professional midwife, in 2000, and is also a New Hampshire certified midwife. Ann is the founder of the Massachusetts chapter of the National Association of Certified Professional Midwives and currently serves on the board of directors. She is also a past president of the Massachusetts Midwives Alliance and served on the Partners in Perinatal Health Committee for 10 years. She is the mother of 6 amazing people, 5 of whom were born at home. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I know. I was thinking, am I going to use notes? But no. There's just so much to say. I really appreciated listening to everyone before me, and it makes me think so hard about everything, about my job, my life, and how we all do things, and how we all have a similar goal in different settings. And part of what I want to talk about tonight is just the unique perspective I feel like I have after working for so long here. I've been in Massachusetts for my whole life, but I've been working as a midwife here for 34 years, and it's so different now than it was when I started, in such a wonderful way. So before I go into all the other details, I think it's really wonderful and important to know that in the 80s, none of this existed. The birth world had only one way of having a baby, and if you were trying to do it in another way, people were not nice to you. So when I was 20, I was wanting to have a baby, and I decided to have my baby at home. I grew up with no exposure at all to birth or a natural childbirth. Grew up in the 60s and the 70s. All the moms went to the hospitals, and they were in the hospital for a week or two, and we waved to them in the window from the parking lot. And we missed our moms when they had babies, and it was a big mystery. And then they would come home, and we didn't, their birth stories were not shared. We didn't know what was happening. So when it was time for me to have a baby, it was a big mystery to me too. And through the grace of God, I just received information that I didn't ask for, but it came. So I had one acquaintance that had had a home birth just before I had my baby, and everyone else I knew in the whole world had only had hospital births. I'd never heard of a home birth. About a few weeks later, a stack of books arrived in my living room from a family member who was working for a publisher, and there was a bunch of books about home birth. And that's the only reason I really knew anything about it at all. But what I found out was that hospital birth at the time meant that I was going to go in, I was going to be in a bed, my baby was going to be taken away from me afterwards. We didn't really have epidurals then, so that wasn't, we weren't talking about inductions and epidurals. We were just talking about an IV and a pubic shave and, you know, babies not really being allowed to nurse or be on you and being taken away from you. And those were the things that I knew I didn't want. So I decided I wanted to have a home birth, and I found some midwives in the Yellow Pages. We probably don't even know what that is anymore.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I looked up midwives, and there was one listing. And lucky for me, there were two midwives that had really revolutionized birth and had come to Massachusetts from California and in the 70s and had a home birth practice. And I found out through them that there were maybe a dozen midwives working across the state. They were all very busy because there weren't enough of them, but there weren't that many births overall. Compared to now, there's probably 3 times as many home births as there were back then. But they were lovely and they were wonderful. But we didn't have hospital collaboration, so there were 2 doctors that were willing to help the midwives. And when I say help, I mean be there if they needed anything medical during the pregnancy, or be able to transfer to the hospital if we needed anything. Sadly, there were only 2 hospitals that would take us if we transferred from a home birth. So that meant we could not go to the closest hospital. If we tried to do that, we would be reported. I mean, it would, like, Child Protective Services. It was, you know, perhaps being arrested as the midwife for practicing medicine without a license. But these 2 doctors stood up and were able to help us and were there for us and sort of held that space for so many moms and midwives over the course of maybe 10 years. And without them, I just don't think we would have gotten where we got now to be able to continue this work. So I was able to have my baby at home, but there were restrictions because we only had those 2 doctors that backed us up. They had parameters and they had rules that the midwives had to follow. So absolutely could not go beyond 42 weeks, could not have a breech baby at home, you know, could not have your water broken and stay at home. There was a lot of rules that the midwives didn't necessarily agree with, but they had to comply with in order to keep the backup situation and the safety net for their clients. And so as a birthing person, when I was 21, that was really difficult for me to be told you can have your baby at home, but it has to be by July, 10th. And just being given a timeline, I know that's not uncommon even now in a hospital setting or in a home setting, but as a midwife now, that's something that I never do. I don't feel like it's kind to say to someone, you have to have your baby by this date and put a timeline on it, because then that just stresses them out, and then the cortisol prevents the labor from happening. And so why are we telling them that? What I tell my clients is, you'll have your baby sometime over these 6 weeks. If we get to 41 weeks, we'll schedule an ultrasound, see how things are going, make sure it all looks good. If we get to 42 weeks, we'll do it again. And then you can decide, do you feel comfortable staying at home, or do you feel like you want to plan an induction in the hospital? And that's their choice. But the worst thing we can do is give somebody a time limit on when they can have their babies, in my opinion, as someone who had to go through that, because I have 6 children. So having to have a 42-week, time limit with each child was very stressful for me, especially since they all came very, very close to that day, if not after. And they were all lovely and wonderful. My second baby was breech 5 times in the last 3 weeks. So he was breech, and then he was head down, and then he was breech, and then he was head down. And they wouldn't do a breech birth at home, and so he had to be head down, or else I had to have a C-section. And the stress of that was huge for me. Again, just having like outside sources tell me you have to follow these rules. It doesn't matter that your mom had a breech delivery in the hospital and your brother is alive. It's not allowed anymore. So that's something that I've put a lot of work into over the course of my career, is just being able to support moms who want to have a breech vaginal delivery at home. And we've done lots of nice ones. But I decided to become a midwife sometime between my second and third child. And it's not something I planned. I really planned on being a stay-at-home mom. But I decided that, if it worked, I'll keep going. And it did seem to work pretty well, so I just kept going. But the thing that I want to share with you all tonight is that as the years went by, I spent the first 20, 25 years, I got it down. We get a client, we talk to them, we have prenatal visits every month. We're doing, 8 to 10 hours of prenatal visits with each client. We're answering all their questions and helping them prepare for natural birth and helping them to have confidence in their bodies and trust in their bodies and correcting misinformation that's out in the world, because there's so much. And I felt like, it was a really good rhythm, and we had a very high success rate, a very low transfer rate. Of course, we're taking low-risk people, so that's a given, and also very highly motivated people who want to take responsibility for their health and their births. So I feel like that's part of the reason it went really well. The big surprise that I've gotten in the last 10 years is that it's all about fear in a way that I didn't truly understand. I felt like we were addressing fear with each client through the course of their pregnancy, talking about it, talking about exposing yourself to natural birth videos, natural birth stories, being around people who had natural births to try to quell that fear. But big surprise, the babies that I helped birth in the 80s and 90s grew up and had babies without fear, with none. And they, after the 12th time that I saw this happen, I was so surprised that actually we removed fear from the culture of childbirth in one generation. And I just didn't expect it. I kind of felt like I was just doing a good job all these years, but as it turns out, they were born in birth. They were born seeing their friends get born and their cousins and their siblings get born, and they were growing up in this big, wonderful tribe we had. And when it was time for them to have a baby, it was no more stressful to them than having a period. They would say, I guess I'll come in and have a prenatal visit with you. And we just didn't really have anything to talk about because they knew that the baby was going to be born. And they also knew that there's a chance we might have to go to the hospital for something that's unexpected. But it didn't stress them out. It was very similar to how we get in the car every day, and we know we could probably have a car accident. Most people have had one or two. But we're not thinking about that when we get in the car. We're not thinking we better take all these precautions just in case, and we better have a car plan. How are we going to get to the store today just in case we have an accident? No, it was more like, well, we're going to have a baby and maybe we'll have to go to the hospital, but if we do, that'll be okay. We'll be fine with it. and they have the most straightforward, easy, fast labors. And over the years, I thought, first babies, longer, stressful, harder because it's the first time. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think they're harder because they don't know that they can do it yet. And after they do it, then they know that they can do it. And then the other babies are more like the babies without fear, because their body and their brain and their hormones have seen, we can do this. And they believe it. So I'm just, I'm trying to figure out ways now that we can help everyone in a more direct way to address the cultural fear, because it's gotten so much more complicated. I'm so old now that I was alive before the internet, and and now it's everything. So every new client I have is just bombarded with information that they didn't ask for, and much of it is fear-based or incorrect. And so just having to address all of their concerns during pregnancy from outside sources is completely different and way more challenging than it was even back when I was working in the 80s and the 90s. We didn't have that. We could go to the library and read a book. We could maybe watch a movie on a birth, but there was not this overwhelming information coming in of things that sounded scary. So I'm just thinking more and more in my practice these days about how can we help everyone, people that didn't have the advantage of growing up around normal natural birth. How do we help them think about that fear that is so inherent and that is driven by the media and that is supported in our culture? How do we change that? And people do it in a lot of different ways. Part of it is places like Beyond Birthing, where they're getting all these resources and all this information and all this support during pregnancy. I think really the key is being with other moms, not necessarily with a midwife or a doula or somebody that's teaching you all the time, but just being in a big group of moms who are saying, this was my experience, this was my experience, this is how it happened. I had that when I was younger. I was in the Leche League, and just having all the moms always there so you could come in and say, hey, I'm feeling a little weird today, I don't know what it is, and having other mothers tell you, yes, that's normal, that happened to me. I think it's the biggest piece of being able to help people be able to birth without as much fear. Some clients that I have want no information, and I love that. I'll come in and they'll say, I don't want to read anything, I don't want to watch movies, I don't want to know anything. When it's time to have the baby, just come in and help me however you can. And they actually are trusting their body in a different way. Even though they don't know what their body's going to do, they're okay with that. And I think that's really cool too. So I think that being able to help them either with offering lots of resources and lots of information, or supporting their desire not to have that, is both very helpful. Many times I go in and sit on my hands at births, and I'm fine with that. Oftentimes people might want more than that, and I'm happy to give that too, whatever it takes. Holding the space is definitely the key for having natural birth. I just envision this world where, because I do work as a doula in the hospital too, and I have seen wonderful things happen at hospitals over the decades. It's such a different place now, and they're so welcoming and accommodating. But since, I don't know, maybe you can help me with, my estimate is that maybe 5 or 10% of people want a natural birth in a hospital. Maybe most people want an induction epidural. That seems to be right? So if we only have this tiny little portion of people that actually desire a true natural birth in a hospital, can we make that happen, without triage and without exams and without monitors, and just, like you said, let them come in and just be around them and let them have their baby? There's not that many of them. We could teach the staff how to do that, because that's what I do. I come in, the most I do is listen to the baby, try not to be too intrusive. So I don't know. I think that would be really cool if we could have a different mindset for those few people who really want natural birth, because it's so hard to move when you're in labor. It's so hard to go from one location to another without that affecting your feelings and that affecting your hormones and that affecting the course of the labor. So protecting that however we can when moving from one space to another, I think would be really cool. But that is the thing I think about the most with my clients nowadays, is just supporting the natural process, not interrupting the process. Once you talk to somebody and they're in labor and you bring them out of where they were at, things change. It just changes the hormonal cascade, and things get interrupted, and then they have to start over again. So that's, for the rest of it, I hope I get to work for another 10 years. And if I do, that'll continue to be my focus, to really just support not just birth without medication, not just birth at home, but birth on the physiological terms, how it's supposed to go without being interrupted. Most people want to be alone in a quiet, dark, warm space. They don't want me to talk to them. They don't want to be interrupted. They might want to be in the water, and just supporting that so that we can have it turn out well. I think that most of us know that you can't interrupt your cat when they're having kittens, because the labor will probably stop. But why we don't recognize that for humans, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great. So our last speaker tonight is Stephanie, my sister. I'm very excited for you all to hear what she has to say. So please come on up, Stephanie. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here, and I feel a little vulnerable with sharing my story, as I am a labor and delivery nurse, and authenticity is often a little delicate in the hospital setting. My journey into birth work is a little unique. I'm going to take you back to 2008, and I was in Ecuador as a Peace Corps volunteer. When you're assigned service, you are connected with a counterpart, and my counterpart's name was Viviana, and she was my best friend. We were two peas in a pod, and during my time there, her sister became pregnant with twins, and I followed along with her pregnancy, and eventually she gave birth, and Viviana called me, and told me, my sister just had the babies, you want to go to the hospital and see her? And I'm like, yes, let's go. I was curious about the hospital setting. I wanted to see how her sister was doing. And we got to the hospital, and I find her sister, and we're in a large room, and I told her, where are the babies? And she said the babies were in the NICU. And I said, well, how did it go? Like, how's your vagina feeling? And she's like, it's sore. And she said, unfortunately, there wasn't enough beds, so I ended up giving birth on the floor to her twins. And that was kind of a shock. I haven't really experienced anything like that before, but the babies end up doing well. I end up being godmother for one of the babies. And that was my first experience really with birth work. Talking about sexual and reproductive health, another experience I had in Ecuador, I needed the morning after pill. And I went to the local pharmacy and I asked for the morning after pill. And the pharmacist said, ¿tú quieres la pastilla a matar su bebé? So, you want the pill that's going to kill your baby? And I said, sí, por favor. Can I have the pill? So, excuse me, I got the pill and all worked out well. So those were my two experiences really into birth work and sexual and reproductive health. I came back from Ecuador and I worked as a Spanish medical interpreter here in the North Shore. And I interpreted everywhere in the community, but I found myself at Beverly Hospital as a interpreting on the labor and delivery floor. And I spent so many nights with women, mostly from Central America, Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and it really changed my perspective, thinking about birth and these women who came here fleeing situations that we can't even begin to imagine, and giving birth in a foreign country, in a foreign land, foreign language, with a distant relative, And there was one experience that really I will never forget. She was 16, and the markings on her body told her story. And she came here while pregnant. And I think about the power that pregnancy gives us, and the power that that child had to come all the way from Guatemala to Beverly, Massachusetts, pregnant. And the OB who delivered, after the delivery, he tucked her in and he left. And some point during the 2-hour period, he came back with bags from Target, and he bought her newborn clothes, diapers, all these things, and it really touched me. You know, that was a unique situation that only happened once. But with that experience, I wasn't really thinking about labor and delivery just yet. I was kind of lost. I wanted to go back abroad. I wanted to get out of the States. But it was during the recession, and there really wasn't a lot out there. So I ended up calling up my host family in Ecuador. And I was like, can I come back just for some time and hang out while I figure things out? So I got on an airplane and went back to Ecuador. And I was hanging out with my family. I had my host mom, Mama Wani, and my host sister, Gusi, and Denise. And we're just hanging out. And then a colleague of mine who was a Return Peace Corps volunteer, she had started a nonprofit up in Quito. It was a scholarship program for little kids to go to school. And she's like, oh, I just finished my post-bac in nursing. You should look into it. So I did, and by the time I finished up my time in Ecuador, I was already registered for my prerequisites, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to school for nursing, and I want to work as a labor and delivery nurse. So I finished up my prerequisites here while I was interpreting, and I ended up, going to NYU. So did my post-bac program at NYU. I needed to get out of the North Shore. Manhattan was calling my name. So I bought a one-way bus ticket. My best friend from high school had just broken up with her boyfriend. She's like, I need a roommate. I'm like, I need a roommate. We get an apartment on Upper East, in East Harlem. Living it up. I'm at NYU. I'm waiting tables in Midtown, going to clinical, then getting on a bus and working at a karaoke bar in Midtown till 2 in the morning. I remember on Halloween I had my scrubs on, and some nursing students in my class came up to me and they're like, is this like your costume, or are you our classmate? I'm like, I'm your classmate and I have to work for a living. So yes, I'm here waiting tables. Bye. So it was a lot of work, right? Waiting tables in a post-bac program. It's strenuous. One positive note, I met my husband in the program. So my husband's also a nurse. I can remember seeing him for the first time. He's walking down. He's tall, dark, and handsome. He has his hat on. And I have my eye on him. And then we have a class together. It was a research class. So we're in the same group. And we're sitting together. And I said, I think it'd be a great idea if we just all exchange phone numbers and figure this out, make some plans. And then the rest is history. But I finished nursing school, and at the end of nursing school, I'm pregnant. So I need to find a job fast. So I applied for one job. It was a community health job with working with pregnant women in Manhattan. Can you get that time? Oh, sure. Yeah. And I tell the person interviewing me that I was pregnant. And all of a sudden, there was no more funding for my job. So I knew I had to keep that quiet. So then I get another job opportunity as a labor and delivery nurse out in Long Island. So we're living in Manhattan, and I keep it quiet about being pregnant, and I get the job. So I'm on orientation, and I'm probably like almost 6 months pregnant. And my preceptor, she's like, I'm just gonna say it, like, are you pregnant? Yes, I'm pregnant. She's like, well, you're gonna have to let the boss know. So I let her know, and she's like, why didn't you tell me during the interview I was pregnant? And I was like, no, it's not gonna happen. So I go through orientation, which was probably 4 months. I finish my orientation, then I have my baby. I'm home for 2 months, and then I go back. And I am so lost. Hospital, and I find her sister, and we're in a large room, and I told her, where are the babies? And she said the babies were in the NICU. And I said, well, how did it go? Like, how's your vagina feeling? And she's like, it's sore. And she said, unfortunately, there wasn't enough beds, so I ended up giving birth on the floor to her twins. And that was kind of a shock. I haven't really experienced anything like that before, but the babies end up doing well. I end up being godmother for one of the babies. And that was my first experience really with birth work. Talking about sexual and reproductive health, another experience I had in Ecuador, I needed the morning after pill. And I went to the local pharmacy and I asked for the morning after pill. And the pharmacist said, ¿tú quieres la pastilla a matar su bebé? So, oh, you want the pill that's going to kill your baby? And I said, sí, por favor. Can I have the pill? So, excuse me, I got the pill and all worked out well. So those were my 2 experiences really into birth work and sexual and reproductive health. I came back from Ecuador and I worked as a Spanish medical interpreter here in the North Shore. And I interpreted everywhere in the community, but I found myself at Beverly Hospital as a interpreting on the labor and delivery floor. And I spent so many nights with women, mostly from Central America, Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and it really changed my perspective, thinking about birth and these women who came here fleeing situations that we can't even begin to imagine, and giving birth in a foreign country, in a foreign land, foreign language, with a distant relative. And there was one experience that really I will never forget. She was 16, and the markings on her body told her story. And she came here while pregnant. And I think about the power that pregnancy gives us, and the power that that child had to come all the way from Guatemala to Beverly, Massachusetts, pregnant. And the OB who delivered, after the delivery, he tucked her in and he left. And some point during the 2-hour period, he came back with bags from Target. And he bought her newborn clothes, diapers, all these things. And it really touched me. You know, that was a unique situation that only happened once. But with that experience, I wasn't really thinking about labor and delivery just yet. I was kind of lost. I wanted to go back abroad. I wanted to get out of the States. But it was during the recession, and there really wasn't a lot out there. So I ended up calling up my host family in Ecuador. And I was like, can I come back just for some time and hang out while I figure things out? So I got on an airplane and went back to Ecuador. And I was hanging out with my family. I had my host mom, Mama Wani, and my host sister, Gusi, and Denise. And we're just hanging out. And then a colleague of mine who was a Return Peace Corps volunteer, she had started a nonprofit up in Quito. It was a scholarship program for little kids to go to school. And she's like, oh, I just finished my post back in nursing. You should look into it. So I did, and by the time I finished up my time in Ecuador, I was already registered for my prerequisites, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to school for nursing. And I want to work as a labor and delivery nurse. So I finished up my prerequisites here while I was interpreting, and I ended up, excuse me, going to NYU. So did my post-bac program at NYU. I needed to get out of the North Shore. Manhattan was calling my name. So I bought a one-way bus ticket. My best friend from high school had just broken up with her boyfriend. She's like, I need a roommate. I'm like, I need a roommate. We get an apartment on Upper East, in East Harlem. Living it up. I'm at NYU. I'm waiting tables in Midtown, going to clinical, then getting on a bus and working at a karaoke bar in Midtown till 2 in the morning. I remember on Halloween I had my scrubs on, and some nursing students in my class just came up to me and they're like, is this like your costume, or you are a classmate? I'm like, I'm your classmate and I have to work for a living. So yes, I'm here waiting tables. Bye. So, so it was a lot of work, right? Waiting tables in a post-bac program. It's strenuous. One positive note, I met my husband in the program. So my husband's also a nurse. I can remember seeing him for the first time. He's walking down. He's tall, dark, and handsome. He has his hat on. And I have my eye on him. And then we have a class together. It was a research class. So we're in the same group. And we're sitting together. And I said, I think it'd be a great idea if we just all exchange phone numbers and and figure this out and make some plans. And then the rest is history. But I finished nursing school, and at the end of nursing school, I'm pregnant. So I need to find a job fast. So I applied for one job. It was a community health job with working with pregnant women in Manhattan. Can you get that time? Oh, sure. Yeah. And I tell the person interviewing me that I was pregnant. And all of a sudden, there was no more funding for my job. So I knew I had to keep that quiet. So then I get another job opportunity as a labor and delivery nurse out in Long Island. So we're living in Manhattan, and I keep it quiet about being pregnant, and I get the job. So I'm on orientation, and I'm probably almost 6 months pregnant. And my preceptor, she's like, I'm just going to say it, are you pregnant? Yes, I'm pregnant. She's like, well, you're going to have to let the boss know. So I let her know, and she's like, why didn't you tell me during the interview I was pregnant? And I was like, no, it's not going to happen. So I go through orientation, which was probably 4 months. I finish my orientation, then I have my baby. I'm home for 2 months, and then I go back. And I am so lost. Outcomes and not even just about healthy mom, healthy baby, the postpartum experience, and how these policies, these timelines, the phrase of how we put labor in a box, but we're not robots, right? We're organic human beings, and it's not linear. We don't go bum, 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 and have a baby. That's not how it is. And then trying to navigate that in my work and still feel like I'm making a difference and I'm not just putting more money in the hospital's pocket is starting to be more predominant in how I feel when I go to work, which is hard. And one other thing that I know, women are coming in and they're saying, I have birth trauma. And when we huddle, I'll say, she reports having birth trauma. Some people will say, okay, what happened? And some people will roll their eyes, and there's this divide. I've heard nurses say, birth trauma is not real. What? Yes, I've heard it. So I hope women keep going and saying and speaking their truth. And I hope there's more healthcare providers out there who listen. Because I do think that change is coming. But we have to keep speaking. We have to keep being loud. We have to listen, even to the hard stories. Another thing that I want to speak about is the inequality in birth work when it comes to women of color. Recently, there is inequality, right? We know the statistics that women of color are 4 times more likely to pass away from preventable causes relating to birth. And it's everywhere. And I think having doulas at the bedside really help break that system. I think women of color are scared, and their trauma is real. I recently had a patient who came from Haiti, and thinking about, she had a daughter and she came from Haiti and she gave birth and she was alone, and she's a refugee. And the system is set up to make the woman the victim, or she is the problem. She needed help with her child, her 5-year-old daughter. Why is it that we as a system don't have space to take care of the child? Why is it that, she doesn't have a place to take her child? What is wrong? Why is the child here? Who can she call somebody? I kid you not, somebody looked at me and she said, "You know how those refugees are." And then I said, "I do, because I'm married to one." Work, it's hard. And advocacy is hard. We cannot stop. And we have to give grace, and we have to speak up for those who don't have a voice, and honor and fight for them. It's one thing to not wanting to be racist, but it's another thing to be anti-racist in a fight for a woman. So now, I'm still working at bedside, but I'm hosting these story slams. We host space for women to come and share their stories. I want to be a part of that change, and I want to create a space for us to move forward together, right? There's so much power in birth. All of this exists because we said yes, right? We hold that power. And I just want to help, and I want to be a part of the story with women going forward and making change so that it's better for our children and the generations after us. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming tonight, and thank you all for sharing your amazing stories. You're so brave and powerful, and we appreciate you taking the time and giving us your energy and attention and opening up to us like that. So thank you all so much. Can we do one more round of applause? And you're welcome to hang out, and please, we have plenty of food and drinks and everything. We'd love for you to stay and chat and get to know everyone. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you.